Hey, let me ask you, what if sales was not about flashy closing lines and slick demonstrations, but rather about doing the little things right, day after day after day? Let's get into it on today's episode of The Buyer's Mind.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Well, welcome everyone to The Buyer's Mind, where we investigate exactly what is going on in the minds of prospects who are considering a purchase decision. That's what this podcast is all about. It's about taking that stroll through the buying brain and knowing your customers so well that the sale literally begins to roll out right in front of you. I'm your host, Jeff Shore. You can read the full bio in the show notes. You can also hop over to jeffshore.com. Make sure you check out our events page, especially if you're a real estate professional. We can absolutely rocket ship your career trajectory if you give us just a couple of days of your time. As always, joined by our show producer, Paul Murphy. Hey, Murph, I want to focus today on doing the little things right, day after day, and why that's so important to our customer. Sales, like so many things, is really about discipline. What do you think? What makes discipline so dang hard?
Well, it's just the word alone, right? Who wants to be disciplined? It sounds painful, right? It takes you back to your childhood when your parents would discipline you. But, you know, it's those little things that your parents were trying to do was to train you to have good habits. And having good habits, produces good results. But when you don't have them, you're just wandering aimlessly.
Yeah, I like the word habit. I think it's a better word than discipline. And you're right, discipline has that connotation of something that's negative. I like that. That's a good word, habits. That's what we'll use for the rest of the show today. Our quote of the day, right along those lines, comes from Thomas Edison, who once said that opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. You know, it's interesting. Some people get into sales for the wrong reason. Namely, that means that they see a great salesperson who makes it look really easy. But here's the thing you got to keep in mind. Whenever you see somebody do something that looks really easy, you got to remind yourself you didn't see the hard part. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into making something look really, really easy. You know, I recently in a hockey game, I scored a goal. I played defense, so that's not my job to score goals, but every now and then it'll happen. But to do it, I had to get around a defenseman. I faked hard to my right, and I quickly pulled the puck back from my forehand to my backhand, and he bit on the fake, and that gave me an open shot at the goal. And I had to move that puck from forehand to backhand in a half a second. If you look at the video, it doesn't look like it's that big of a deal. But what you don't see on the video is the number of hours that I spent early in the morning skating around with the puck around cones on the ice, trying to very quickly get it from my forehand to my backhand and back. And the idea here is, I'll give you another great example of this. There's a great video. If you Google New York Times Jerry Seinfeld, you'll probably see an article and a video that goes along with it where a New York Times writer followed Jerry Seinfeld around for an entire day. And one of the things on the video you're going to see is this discussion about how it took him 2 years to write this one joke about Pop-Tarts. And the level of detail that goes into him writing one joke and then practicing it over and over again. And the thing is, when you watch Jerry Seinfeld on the stage, he makes it look so easy. But you know what? You didn't see the hard part. And I just want to encourage you to think about your own career in sales. If you want something to look easy and to feel easy, you got to get through the hard part. It is a long series of practice sessions and the habit of improvement that we need to really get into if we want to understand that. And we're going to hear that today from our guest, Iain Swanston. He's not flashy, but he's solid because he does the little things right day after day after day. We want to let you know that the podcast is brought to you by our good friends over at Home Street Bank. This is our show sponsor. It's also my lender of choice. I used Home Street the last time I purchased a home, and it was the smoothest real estate transaction I have ever had. Professional, dependable, great rates, great people. If you're a real estate professional and you want your customer taken care of by the best, make sure that you connect with Home Street Bank. You can go to homestreetbank.com to learn more. That's homestreetbank.com. Well, before we get to our interview, let me bring you our sales tip of the day. And the tip of the day is to build up some myelin. Look it up, M-Y-E-L-I-N, myelin. Myelin is a insulating fabric in the brain. It wraps these neural pathways so that brain signals move more quickly and more accurately. And it is the scientific underpinning of the development of talent. Now, I first saw this when I read Daniel Coyle's book, The Talent Code, and then subsequently saw an incredible video. I think it's on his website at thetalentcode.com/Nightline, where the ABC News show Nightline did a segment on how talent is grown. And the idea here is that which we are doing over and over again, when we're putting in that hard work, that repetition, that practice, that discipline, that habit of doing it over and over again, we're building up myelin in our brain. So something which seems really uncomfortable at first, over time, not only does it feel more natural, but we do it better and we do it more effectively. And I think one of the worst things that we can do in sales is to try something once, right? If you're talking about a new skill, trying it once is a bad idea because it's going to be massively uncomfortable. You're probably not going to do it well. You're going to throw it out. Now, the only way to really adopt a new skill is to do something over and over and over and over and over again. The old saying goes that amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. That it is so built up in their brain that they see that happen. And Murph, I'm sure this is true for you because when you look at things that you do on the tech side, that people like me, I would look at it and I would go, you'd have to give me a manual and 5 days of training to try and figure out something that's to you is actually pretty darn easy. And I'm guessing it's just because, well, you've done it enough, right?
Well, it's like anything. You practice and you repeat, and it's just how my brain is wired is more for some tech side things, which is why my parents are always calling me and ask me to fix their computer. Their brains aren't wired for it, and mine is. But, I think you've got a strong point there that it is that repetition of doing it over and over again that you get used to what it is that you need to do.
Yeah, and at first it might be really uncomfortable, but you stay with it and amazing things happen. So this is the goal. Just pick one thing that you want to work on. It might be a brand new a technique. It might be something that you're stumbling with a little bit right now. It's how you're overcoming a specific objection. But just figure out what the right way to do it is. Get some help with your manager if you need to. And then just do it over and over and over again. And every time you do it, you're going to build more myelin in the brain. You're going to make your brain stronger so that by the time you are in an actual conversation with a customer, you don't have to overanalyze it. It's going to come to you very, very naturally. All right, well, I'm joined by sales expert, author, and blogger Iain Swanston. He is the co-founder of the website closers.com. That's KLOZERS.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. I came across Iain because we're constantly battling in a friendly competition on a website that measures influence among sales leaders out there. And so I thought, boy, this guy's always up there near the top. I got to find out more about him. So I was thrilled to be able to connect with him and have him on the show. Joining us all the way from Scotland, Iain Swanston. Iain, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. And yes, I have been following you a long time, and I've certainly enjoyed the content on your website there, Jeff.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Just take us to the beginning. Tell us about your start in sales.
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. Many years ago, I worked for a crane company. Mm-hmm. I'm sure your audience have maybe, folks, you might not know what a crane is. I'm sure you might have passed one on the highways there in America. The big, lumbering, slow,
sure.
Yellow machines that are going up and down the right. highways there to different sites. So I worked for a crane rental company, and basically what happened was everybody was out on jobs doing work, and there was a call come in for a site survey. And the only person that was there was myself, and the boss sent myself out, and I basically met with a construction manager on a site, and I measured up the site, and I said to him, well, based on what I've discovered now and what you're telling me, I think you need this crane here. And he said, okay, that's great. And I said, so what do we do now? And he said, well, I guess I should give you a purchase order. So he went away and wrote out a purchase order, and I took it back to the office, and I said, okay, so I've done the site visit, and there's the purchase order. And it wasn't normal for them to get a purchase order there and then. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I just did what you told me.
Yeah.
I just went out and I just measured the job up, and I asked them, what should we do now? And they told us. So I really fell into sales by accident because from that point on, the boss, somewhat mistakenly thought that I might be good at sales, right, and would keep sending me out, and I managed to keep picking up some business. So I don't think anybody leaves school and says, I'm going to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. We leave school, we want to be a fireman, we want to be a policeman, we might want to join the army, we might want to be an athlete or a footballer. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people naturally, certainly in Scotland, we don't leave school thinking, you know what, I'm going to be a sales guy. Mm-hmm. It's just not natural. And most people seem to fall into sales by accident.
Right. Well, they don't teach us sales in school in the first place, so we don't really know. We've not really had the opportunity to be able to apply that trade or even to understand what it is. But the beauty of that story, and that story is told in different iterations, I think, all over the world, is that you'll see somebody who starts in sales and they're immediately good at what they do. And we veterans are like, hey, wait a minute, hold on there. We haven't taught you the ropes yet. But your approach was so simple, and perhaps maybe the longer we stay in sales, the more we tend to complicate this thing.
I think that's a great point. We do tend to complicate things. I think sales is it's essentially a communication process, and for us, the one thing that we try and get over to all of our clients is that actually, the more that you try and sell, the less successful you will be. And if you take my own experience, I wasn't there to sell the crane hire. I was just there to do a site survey, and I was simply asking questions. What should we do now? Because I genuinely didn't know the answer, but I was trying to help the client. And I think that for most of us, the more that we try and sell, the more unsuccessful we'll be. But it's difficult to bottle that little sales guy inside us up, because we're all passionate about what we do. If you're driven by a target and you have a VP of sales who's pushing you to get results, sometimes that can create negative behaviors that don't necessarily get the best results.
But it is a very, very difficult situation, because we are held accountable to a level of success, to the quotas that we have to have. And I do agree with you that there are times in that challenges our motives, and suddenly we stop acting in the best interest of the customer in front of us. But my guess is here that you're the type of sales consultant, sales trader who's going to look at it and say, do what's right by the customer, and you're going to meet your numbers.
Absolutely. And it's okay sometimes to walk away from a sale. You're never going to win every single battle, and sometimes it's best to walk away. If you're having to push and there's no natural fit between what your offer is and what the client is looking for, if there's no natural fit and you have to push, then typically what can happen is that you're really only creating a future problem for yourself when that client becomes on, that customer comes on board, and you've got to try and service them, and their expectations are different to what you're actually going to provide. So sometimes it's absolutely the best thing to do is to walk away from some deals.
You're based out of Scotland, although Closers.com has an international reach, the United States all the way to Australia. Is sales basically anywhere in the world? I mean, you deal with a lot of international clients. Is a sale in Scotland the same as it is in Canada and Australia and London and Dubai?
So I think that's a great question. One of the things that we do here is we teach executive education at Strathclyde Business School, which is one of the top universities here. Mm-hmm. And part of that audience is people literally from all over the world who are coming to do some form of a degree at the university. And it's interesting that sales is sales all over the world. There may well be cultural differences that you absolutely need to be aware of, but the actual processes of selling are absolutely the same and true not just for anywhere in the world, Jeff, but for every industry. I could take you, who's who's a very successful salesperson, and you've got a great background, lots of experience in real estate. With the greatest respect, I could stick you in a shoe shop and you'll be the best sales guy. The principles are the same, and a lot of this isn't sales; it's personal development.
When you mentioned the cultural differences, though, and those cultural differences can be so striking that if I take the same approach that I'm going to take right out of the gate, well, look, I just look at it this way, just even in the United States, the same exact approach that I'm going to find if I'm selling cars in New York will not work if I'm selling cars in Seattle. So, and that's true, of course, internationally as well. So what advice do you give your salespeople in regards to being sensitive to the cultural differences and the way that that's going to change the style of the salesperson? Having
lived in America, I absolutely understand the differences between New York, the difference between New York and Texas, and Texas and Seattle, and even the states in the Midwest. What I would suggest, though, is that although the process is the same, the way that you apply those processes can be different. And it's simply understanding your customer and always allowing your customer to go first. If you want to dictate the conversation, you're more likely to put yourself in a box and get stuck. Whereas if you allow the customer to go first and ask the customer, what's going to work best for you? Now, that will work in New York, it's going to work in Texas, and it's going to work in Seattle and Oklahoma. But if you turn up at the car showroom and the salesman comes running out and starts, instead of asking any questions, starts to give you some form of pitch, then immediately you're actually going to be in the back foot as a salesperson, although you might not know it. The best thing that you can do is simply go ask questions and try building up that relationship, and don't try and sell anything.
In the business-to-business environment where you do a lot of your work, you're going to find that you're dealing with international clients where the culture is very different because the thinking is different. And here I reference specifically the difference between Eastern thought and Western thought. So let's take it in that direction now. You're suggesting that the processes are the same. It's the application of the process that is different. Does that go all the way to the way business is done in the Middle East or the Far East? Or does that still hold up in those environments?
I genuinely believe it does, because regardless of what we're doing, what we're selling, and the environment we're in, the customer always comes first. Now, how you then control the conversation and direct that conversation to the area that's going to be of most benefit to you may well be different, and the questions are certainly going to be different. But the customer is going to come first, regardless of if you're in the USA, if you're in Japan, if you're in Saudi Arabia. The customer is always going to come first. So simply allowing them to lead, but bear in mind that you're going to have to somehow control that conversation. And I always try and explain to salespeople that the best thing you can be is a little bit like a traffic director. So they're going to come at you, and sometimes they're going to be all over the place, talking, asking questions, and your job is to gently guide them into the direction of your products or services, or the pain points that your products or service are going to actually eliminate.
You wrote a great blog post recently about lead follow-up, and I'm just curious your thought on this. After all that has been said and written on this on the topic of lead follow-up, why is this still a problem? Why do we still struggle to get salespeople to do what I would consider to be one of the most fundamental aspects of the job?
I think I'd be cautious about saying there's one thing that's going to solve that problem. But if I did have to choose only one thing, I think it would be sales management. And in the organizations that we work with that are the most successful, the common factor isn't actually the quality of the salespeople, it's the quality of the sales leadership in there, and their ability to put the systems and processes in place that allow them to manage their teams. And I don't mean micromanage. I mean manage by a light touch, but equally hold the salespeople accountable. And it's as much a cultural thing as it is an individual thing with salespeople. Does that make sense to you, Jeff?
A culture within a team? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think we talk about there can be a culture of satisfactory underperformance where salespeople are cruising. And you know what? I spend most of my life with salespeople. I absolutely love them to death. I'm a sales guy myself, so you know I'm not here to kick every sales guy. But in certain organizations, there is undoubtedly a culture of satisfactory underperformance where there isn't a natural drive to be the best. And it's interesting that if you've got, most people will be familiar with the example of A, B, and C players. If you've got a team of B and C players and you bring in an A player, and that A player is the thoroughbred, he's the racehorse, and he's the guy that can knock the ball out the park every single time, what happens is that A player is looking around him and looking at all the B players and thinking to himself, why am I getting in the office early? Why am I staying late? Why am I putting in all this extra effort? Because nobody else is doing that and they seem to be getting away with it and nobody's being held accountable and everybody else seems to cruise. So maybe I'll start to cruise. And if you want to sort of, really upgrade your sales force, the danger is that you bring in an A player and the A player either stays but he downgrades himself to B player, or the A player comes in and looks around at all the B's and C's and goes, listen, I'm a thoroughbred, I'm a racehorse. I'm in the wrong place because it's all donkeys here. And he very quickly exits stage left.
Yeah, there's no question about it. We see that happen a lot. And I've certainly seen it happen over my career. And actually, you can think back as a salesperson, looking in a sales meeting, looking across the table and thinking, that guy? I'm not sure that guy can tie his own shoes. Why exactly is he here at the same table with me? And then, of course, that causes me to question, am I at the right table? So I do agree with the idea that there can be that culture of satisfactory underperformance. And on the other hand, there are some companies where when it comes to follow-up, for example, it's just not optional. And I don't think any sales leader would look at it and say, well, no, it's optional here. They're all going to say it's required. But as I like to say over and over again ad nauseum, I think some would suggest, your standards are not what you desire. Your standards are what you accept. And as a leader, if you accept that behavior becomes acceptable. So part of my concern is that a manager might look at it and say, that's unacceptable. And I'd look back and say, really? Did you accept it? Because if you accept it, it becomes acceptable. And I think that the best performers out there are the ones who are looking for that high standard. They want to be a part of that. I don't want to call it lazy management because it's not fair to a manager who's just flat overburdened. But I do think I am inclined to agree with you. I think that this is a leadership issue more than an individual salesperson's issue. Let's go back to the discussion on follow-up here. There's a fear in the back of the mind of a salesperson that they might bother people by following up. Do you think that that's founded in any truth? And if so, how do you counter that?
I'm sure you're aware of Tibor Shantor.
Sure, yeah.
Who is a fantastic salesperson.
Yeah.
And is probably one of the best trainers, teachers in our industry when it comes to the telephone. And Tibor and I have had a number of conversations about the telephone and the relevance of it. And Tibor is an absolute advocate of the telephone. I am not an advocate of the telephone, and let me explain why.
Sure.
Nowadays, nobody wants to spend the time to learn to do what Tibor does. And what they then do is they then do become a pest when they get on the phone because they don't know how to open correctly. They don't know how to control the conversation. And they then get negative results. And they then, they are genuinely interrupting and not helping people. And the people, Tibor did not become, get to the level that he's at now without hundreds, probably thousands of calls to learn this skill and craft. Nobody wants to learn that anymore. I've got teenage kids here, Jeff, and they've all got the latest Apple phones, and none of them want to make a phone call. It's the dynamics of our communication have changed, and our generation has changed, and our children, and maybe it's different in America, but our children over here, they will WhatsApp, they will email, they will text, they will do everything, and then the last option of communication is the telephone. So until we somehow get over that and learn how to actually and say, well, you know what, we're going to actually learn to we're prepared to invest the time to learn how to use the telephone correctly, we will come over as an interruption. We will come over awkward and not actually helpful. So for me, it's all about training. And my background, when I first started, when we were doing the cranes, we eventually had yellow pages in the office, the big telephone directory. We just sat and called everybody. We called all the building sites, all the building managers, all the roofing companies, etc. And it wasn't a particularly pleasant job, but it was a good learning environment for me. And that doesn't happen anymore. So I see the telephone as more a sniper's rifle here, where it's really laser targeted, and when it's used correctly, it's absolutely lethal. Not in the old days when I started, where it was just ring everybody.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. For me, I know I have come full circle on that. I used to tell people when email first came out, don't call me. Everybody call, just leave me an email. And then eventually my email became overburdened, and I would tell people, if you really want to reach me, leave me a text message. And now I get so many text messages, I'll tell people, if you really want to reach me, make a phone call. And it's funny how that works, where we've neglected what is, as you say, a very, very powerful weapon if we learn to use it properly. But I totally agree, too, because I got a phone call, I don't know, some months back from a car dealership where I purchased a car a couple of years ago. And clearly this was somebody who had just been sat down on a desk with a bunch of names and phone numbers and said, call all these people and see if they're ready to buy another car. And it was just the most incredible waste of my time just to be able to go through that conversation. But on the other hand, if I already had, this is what confuses me. If I have a relationship with you already, if I already trust you, if there's already been some sort of communication that's taken place, I'm not offended at all by a follow-up phone call. In fact, I rather welcome it, as long as you've got something that will help me in this conversation.
I could not agree more. The telephone, I think, and again, I'm cautious because I'm certainly of a certain generation, and I'm not aware of any organization that can scale itself just using the telephone. I think the telephone's hugely important, but it's only one instrument,
right,
or one ingredient in the complete mix that you need.
We're just about out of time. You have got a new opportunity through the website closers.com. And again, we'll put that in the show notes, but it's KLOZERS.com. You have built a whole online training platform through closers.com. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it works?
Sure. Basically, probably many of your clients listening into this podcast, Jeff, many of your the sales teams that you've got are dispersed geographically. So you might have a sales guy in Oregon, you might have a sales guy in Louisiana, Arkansas, etc. And to try and get these guys in one room to give them any form of training is becoming more and more difficult. It's really, if you've got 10 guys in one office, just trying to get a date in the diary where they're all in the office can be difficult. But to get guys to fly in from out of state is really difficult. And what we've found, responding to our own clients' needs, that it's much easier to provide some form of training and coaching online for them. And that way they can access it, self-paced learning, when they want, anywhere, anytime. And obviously, training's great, but without any form of reinforcement, a lot of training can actually get, I think that the statistics are 80% of what you're taught in a training room, you forget within the first month without any form of reinforcement. So to address that, we do live coaching, we've got forums online, and we've got Slack in there as well. So any sales guys who are out in the field, as they're going through the training, I beg your pardon, there's coaching and support for them ongoing. And we've rolled this up into a monthly membership for B2B sales guys. And we've got lots of clients in America, the Middle East, the Near East, Australia, and obviously here in Europe. So it's just a great tool to deliver training online. And the most important thing is it keeps sales guys in the field where the customers are. Instead of spending a day flying in and a day flying back, it keeps them in the field where the customers are.
I love it. I love it. And that can be accessed at closers.com, KLOZERS.com. Iain Swanston joining us all the way from Scotland. Iain, thank you so much. Great conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on The Buyer's Mind.
Thanks so much, Jeff, and I look forward to catching up again.
So there you have it, Murph. Great conversation with Iain. A good guy. You were out his way recently. You didn't stumble across him when you were in the Isles, did you?
It would have been fun to make it over to Scotland, but no, we were in Northern England and over Wales and Ireland. But
fair enough.
Scotland's a beautiful country. I love it.
It was really insightful, too, because he works with people from all around the world to hear some of his takes on the idea that there may be cultural differences, there might be stylistic differences, but the processes are the same over and over again, no matter where you are. That was interesting stuff.
You'd think it'd be different, wouldn't you? You'd think that different parts of the world must have different ways of doing things, but when you really think about it, people have needs, and if you can understand them, you can meet their needs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Murphy. That's what we do in sales. We help people at a time of need. And so if you can get to the understanding first, then it changes everything. And what we heard from Iain about that is not inconsistent from what we hear over and over again from our guests on The Buyer's Mind. And that is that it always starts with the more you try and sell, the less successful you're going to be. The more you try and just get out there and say, here's my product. Isn't it great? You're going to love it. How many would you like? It's off-putting, and it's certainly not in that problem-solving mode. So when we go into sales with the idea that this is the idea of understanding first, and when we fully understand, if we've got something that's going to improve that customer's life, then that's how we make the difference. It was also interesting to talk to him about follow-up, which is an issue that is constant. It's something that all salespeople seem to deal with at some level, all organizations. Of course, a lot of people have made a lot of money selling the solutions and the software and everything else to ensure follow-up, but ultimately, it's going to come down to the mindset of the salesperson. And that's why I appreciated Iain talking about it, even from the perspective of sales leaders, the support that they're giving to the salespeople and the level of accountability to which they're holding their salespeople. And if those things are missing, then we're going to end up with, as Iain pointed out, a culture of satisfactory underperformance. But I do want to encourage you, the salesperson, to think that through, to recognize that if you have a relationship with that customer already established, you've already chatted with them before, live or on the phone or in the past, or perhaps you've been chatting by electronic mail or by text or whatever it is, if there's some form of relationship, if there's any level of trust whatsoever, I'm telling you, be bold and pick up the phone, because that phone call, when you get voice-to-voice communication, it's always going to be more effective than anything else. Now, the only time that that's not true is if you don't have something to say. So here's an idea. Come up with something to say, something that's going to be valuable and beneficial and helpful to that customer. But I just will tell you right now, I rarely get phone calls. But when I do, I tend to answer them. I tend to take them. It's that rare, especially compared to the number of emails or text messages that I get every day. And I think our customers the same way. We're afraid that we're going to bother people. Well, you know what? If you have something bothersome, you probably will. But if you have something that adds value, you want to step it up. You want to make the phone call, all in the best interest of your customer. One of the things that I know about Iain is that, and you probably heard this, he's not flashy, but he's solid. He's not a showman, but he is very effective. And the question that I am left with after listening to Iain is, how willing are you to be persistent? I mean, are you addicted to the idea of immediate gratification where I need to have this down, I need to have it down in a hurry? That's just not the way it works. You've got to be able to look at it and say, how persistent are you? How persistent are you in the questions that you are asking? How persistent are you in the phone calls that you're making? How persistent are you in the practice, in the development of good habits? You don't have to be flashy. You don't have to be slick. You don't have to be a showman. You need to be solid. You need to be persistent in order to be effective. And I just want you to just sort of look at that today and ask yourself the question, what am I willing to work hard for? What am I willing to really pour myself into? The fact of the matter is, we say this many times on The Buyer's Mind, the destination called mastery is on a road called repetition. And you know what the problem with repetition is? It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not the flashy part of sales. But if you want to make something look really easy, you got to do the hard part. All right, well, that's another episode of The Buyer's Mind. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for your listenership, but also for posting reviews on your social media, letting other people know. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You can find everything you need at jeffshore.com. But until next time, go out there and change someone's world.